1 million species of plants and animals have been discovered so far.
I actually like using the technology instead of doing the paper pencil before, since not only were we learning about our biome, but we were also learning so many technology skills that we would need later in our lives.
Do you know of a place where you can gaze at amazing animals, see beautiful coral reefs, and be engulfed by awesome waves? If you guessed the ocean, then you were absolutely right. One animal is the blue whale. It is the largest animal on Earth because it can grow up to 100 feet long. It's so big that a small person could crawl through its main arteries and 20 people could stand on its tongue. Stay warm. The blue whale has blubber, which is a layer of fat that keeps out the cold. While another marine resident, the sea otter, has fur that is more dense than any other animal. They have about 1 million hairs per square inch. That's about 10 times the hair you have on your head.
I'd like to have had more time on left. We couldn't use it that much, which made it hard. We need to share it with another class. I also had to share left with the entire school. Typing our paragraphs into Google Slides was helpful because we knew that we would have it as a teleprompter to help us when we recorded.
Travel agency, and I'm here to take you to the tundra. Did you know in the summer the sun shines 24/7? Did you know the tundra is only 10,000 years old, which is the youngest biome in the world? The word tundra means treeless beds. There are actually a lot of people living there for oil and mining, so you won't be the only one there. A major tourist attraction is the Northern Lights.
After I recorded my video, I was really excited to create the final video on the iPad. But we had to wait almost 2 weeks.
It would also be way more efficient if we had more iPads too. I mean, sharing 4 iPads with 102 students was really hard. Plus, we ran out of space on the ones we had. Twice.
I loved it because it allowed us to venture into the technology world, and it was a lot more fun than just writing with paper and pencil on that. And I also think that it's made me more excited every day at school. It was exciting to use the iPad since I have one at home. It was a new learning experience for me because I never had the chance to do something like this in school.
Have you ever wondered what it's like outside the places you've been and lived? Have you ever had a thought pass your mind about what it's like in the woods, the wilderness, the unknown? Well, I intend that by the time you're done watching this, you will at least understand one portion of the unknown, the tundra.
A place where I can get information easier and faster.
A place that is interactive.
A place with less paper and less wasted time.
A place that is colorful and comfortable.
A place to create. A place to work with each other in new ways.
A place to promise.
A place that gets us ready for what's next.
We still have 7 minutes till we're allowed to start. If you want to fill out the form. Or you can play the video. Try to give us time.
Something that and so they just said all of those things are too hard. I love it. Well, I love it. It's kind of like because, like, someone needs to go to the bathroom and sign out and I need so I need to do a nice quick. So it's annoying and but part of that's my fault because mine is set up that I can't do it. But most of the languages have it so that they just approve themselves, which I just so it's a shame to put yourself in my room, then I can also sit down and go into it. But I know it's really because he's sweet dog and then came up and said maybe Lisa. So somehow I must have had your number at one point. Yeah, look.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Every number,
Yeah.
I mean, that's been cool.
So thank you.
yeah, and say you can see you're fine. I'm going to stay here after.
Gotcha. I mean, I love
I know, right? I'm like, I don't want to say
it won't let me get it. I've never downloaded it. Yeah, I've never downloaded it.
Welcome to Fixer Upper 2.0, Revolutionize Your Lessons. Before we begin, please turn off your cell phone ringer. Fire regulations require that all session attendees have a chair, so if you are standing, I need to ask you to find a chair or please exit the room. If you are saving a chair for a friend, allow someone else to sit there. If you are plugging devices into wall outlets, please keep in mind that people may be moving around during the sessions and your device may be damaged. Act 48 hours will still be available through P&C as we have offered in the past, but no codes will be distributed this year. You will still be able to submit your Act 48 credit online via the evaluation process. You can find the links in the Attendee Service Center on the P&C webpage. And now I present to you Kristen Zachary.
I think there's just one chair right there, and then I'm not using that chair, so if anybody wants to sit up here, that's fine. My name is Kristen Zachary. I am a 5th grade teacher in the North Allegheny School District, which is north of Pittsburgh. And I am here today to talk to you a little bit about some lessons that I've done in my classroom as a 5th grade teacher. I'm happy to see, thank you for filling out the form. I'm happy to see the room is full of elementary teachers, so that's awesome. I know that I personally, this is my 4th year coming to the conference, I like hearing from teachers that are actually in the classroom doing these projects. I also love hearing from technology integrators and tech coaches, but sometimes they're not always in the trenches like we are, actually dealing with 25 and 27 and maybe even 30 students and doing some of these lessons. So hopefully you can take something with you that you can apply. I'm going to show you some 5th grade examples, but also talk about how you can either make them for upper grades or lower grades. But we're going to keep moving because I have a lot of slides. So that is my email address in case you would want to email me. I didn't share the presentation ahead of time because I wanted a chance to go through it, but I will tweet it out later if you would like it, or you can send me an email. My Twitter handle is @TeachZachary, so if you wanted to tweet at me and ask me any questions, I will be happy to answer them for you. So I'll give you a minute to take a picture of that if you need it. I actually come from a family of teachers. My mom retired about 5 years ago. She was an elementary librarian for 36 years. And this year my dad is actually retired after 41 years of being an elementary principal, which doesn't happen a lot anymore, right? So it come from a line of teachers. I feel like I was kind of born to do this. So I'm hoping that you're going to take away some ideas today. So unfortunately, Chip and Joanna could not be here. I know. I tried to put it out there on Twitter, hoping they would come and see if I got them. They didn't. They said they were really busy and they couldn't come. But I like the idea of calling this session Fixer Upper because I think that so many times teachers feel like they have to completely throw out a lesson that they've always done to try to integrate some kind of technology resource, and you don't. If you think of the show Fixer Upper, they're never going in and completely bulldozing a house that they are fixing up. They're picking one room, they're picking little features that they like, and then they're enhancing them. And so as we go through some of these lessons today and talk about it, I want you to think about how they kind of run that show. And if you haven't seen that show, basically they are just taking a house and remodeling certain rooms and certain things that they want to make better. So I like to think about that when I'm thinking about the lessons. So at this point, everybody's heard about SAMR, and everybody's talked about the SAMR model, and I know that a lot of, I would say, maybe administrators that are not necessarily in the classroom might think everyone needs to always be in the redefinition stage, and that is not true. We all know if you're in the classroom day after day, this is not able to be done every day. It's not even able to be done sometimes every week, and it's definitely not able to be done with every lesson. That would just be an insane amount of time that we just don't have in the day. But these are just some examples of some different things. So I'm going to show you some different parts of the SAMR model. And if you're not familiar, you know, when you're working with substitution, you're just taking one thing away and putting something in its place. So instead of writing it on a piece of paper, you're typing it into a Google Doc. All the way over to potentially making a book in Book Creator, or maybe even a Google slideshow, maybe making an iMovie, using different AR, VR, explain everything, and things like that. So the first thing that I always start with my 5th graders, if you use Google Apps for Education, and I saw on the survey that a lot of people were talking about that, the very first thing I do with my kids is have them organize. I teach 5th grade, so they have come to me using Google in 3rd grade and Google in 4th grade. Sometimes their Google Drives are a hot mess, although some of us in this room might have Google Drives that are hot messes. So sometimes they come to me and I'm like, whoa, okay, before we do anything, I want you to take everything from last year and I want you to make a folder, I want you to label it and put everything from last year in a 4th grade folder. Now we're gonna make a 5th grade folder for this year, and this is where all of your items are gonna live. And then you can see that that screenshot is actually from my screen. This is just a last year screenshot, but I try to organize my own Google Drive in places where I can find them. And I know a lot of my colleagues, if I even look at their Google Drives, they're just massive and they can't find anything. And we all know that we can use the search bar at the top, but sometimes it's just easier to be able to look at what you're doing. Later we're going to talk about having folders, and I so aptly named them kid folders. But I can find the folders that they've shared with me, and I know that I can find that if I'm labeling it with each of the individual things. So it's just an idea to keep your Google Drive organized so you can find things much more quickly. Another free resource that I use and have used for the last 4 years is called Schoology. My district does not have an LMS for below 6th grade that is one that everyone has to use. So about 4 years ago, my team and I decided we needed a go-to place. We needed a place where the kids could go to get things, and we didn't want to continue to just share and airdrop and do all of those things. So we signed up for a Schoology account, and we started using it very small. So when you think about Fixer Upper picking one thing, we did it the very first year. All we did on Schoology was spelling. The kids did their spelling homework. Some of them did it on paper in a packet. Later throughout the year, we morphed into them doing it on their iPads using an app called Notability. They submitted it through a folder. They were able to check their answers using an answer key that we uploaded into Schoology. And then they actually took their tests weekly on Schoology as well, because they take multiple choice tests. That was all we did with Schoology the very first year that I used it. You can see on the left-hand side, this is actually a sample of what they're doing. So today, while I'm not in the classroom, they are actually working on this section in math. So today, I made a video that they can watch, and then they have a little assignment that they need to do. And then these are just comments. I told them they need to complete a seesaw activity, and then they have some pages that they need to complete. It's a nice place if you haven't looked at Schoology before. I know there's a lot of different LMSs out there, but I really like this one. I like that it's organized and it's in folders and the kids know where to go to find things. This past year, they actually unlocked Google Classroom, so a lot of you in this room might be familiar with that. I'm not as familiar with it because it was new to me this year, but I've dabbled in both. But what I have done research on is Google Classroom and Schoology can coexist together. They don't really replace one another. Google Classroom is great when you are submitting Google assignments and when you have the stream, but I really like how you can see on the right-hand side of ELA in Schoology, I can have folders, and inside the folders has the assignments, and it's all labeled out very clear. I can unpublish and republish things, so on my end, I can see all that I have. On their end, they only see what I need them to see. And I've started to see that in Google Classroom, that stream can get a little bit overwhelming, so that's why I like to use them kind of in conjunction with one another. So, before we get into the lessons, because I know that it can be a little bit overwhelming, I do help teach some different professional developments at my school, and I have a lot of teachers that are like, no, I can't, I'm so used to doing this, I've done it this way for the last 22 years, and this is the packet I do for science, and I just can't. So, if at first you don't succeed, this little guy is going to tell you what you should try.
And real global machines don't always work on the first try. So this is my chart. How much successes and how much failures. I think we'll have, this is my hypothesis, and this is the actual. My hypothesis on successes is 2. I think it will have 10 to 20.
10 technology?
10 to 20 failures and 2 successes. That's my hypothesis. Oh! If you don't succeed, try again.
So, I always like to share that video. I actually saw that video when George Couros was here a couple of years ago and he was a keynote. And I feel like it applies. If you're there before school, after school, at home, whenever you're trying to integrate this technology, like that's you. You're like, this failed like a million times. And then when it works, you're that crazy person that's like, oh my God, it worked, right? And no one's around and you're like, and so I want you to keep that in mind, is that you should just try it, right? It might fail in front of the students. It might even fail during an observation, right? And then you start to get like all sweaty and you're like, okay, I'll figure it out. It'll be fun. But you should just keep trying. Like try again is what he's kind of saying. And even if it doesn't work the first time, keep going. So we're going to go through different subject areas. I'm going to show you some different examples. One of the things that I do with my class after we do our unit on graphing is they create a graphing project. And I've been teaching for about 12 years, so the first couple of years, you do that typical graphing project. We're like, hey, come up with a question. And they come up with that really great question of like, what's your favorite color? Like, what do you like for lunch? What's your favorite subject? Which is always recess, and that's not a subject. And so they go around, they ask these questions, and we made a poster. And so I'm going to show you how we transitioned into something a little bit better, but we didn't throw out the structure. So basically, what I had them do, we started out, as I said, paper pencil collection long ago. We didn't even type anything in that time period. First of all, because all we had were 2 computer labs. Now, thankfully, due to the video that you saw at the beginning, if you were here, we are one-to-one. This is the second year we're one-to-one in 5th grade, but when I started doing these projects, we were not. As you heard the boy in the video say, we did the green screen project with 4 iPads and 102 students. It happened. It was not fun, but it happened. Now we are one-to-one, so it does make things a little bit easier, but I know not everyone is, which is why I like to drive that point home. We started out, we did a frequency chart. They had to survey at least 25 other kids, what's your favorite color, what's your favorite lunch. Any question they wanted, they wrote up their paragraphs, we type it if we could get into the lab. So for those of you that are still sharing carts or labs, you have to think about this like, I might want to do this at the end of April, so I should sign up now so that I can actually get whatever it is that I need. And we all know we're just trying to get like 1 week ahead, not like 4 months ahead. And so we pasted it onto a poster board, we gave a presentation to the class, and here we were. And so I was like, well, there has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a better way to not say what's your favorite color or like, what's your favorite lunch. So what I did is I adapted the project outline over a period of years. So that's where like this doesn't get so overwhelming. I didn't just do this overnight. Every year I kind of thought of a different way to tweak it. Don't try to do every change to a lesson in 1 year. With this one, for example, we worked our way up the ladder. We eventually went to a keynote, but before that we did a Google slideshow. Before that, and before all of the different COPA compliance things were coming down, we used Prezi. So I used a lot of different things. I made them choose a relevant question, which was kind of important. And I made them try to take on the role of a CEO of a company that they liked, which also made a difference. And so I replaced the paper survey with the Google form. And so I know that a lot of teachers, maybe if you teach first grade or second grade, you're thinking like maybe my kids can't make a Google form on their own. You'd actually be quite surprised. The first year we did this, we were not one-to-one. I had to sign out the laptops and do all those things. It was pretty intuitive, and they were able to do what they needed to do with their Google form. If you have younger students, you could pair them up with maybe an older grade level to try to help. So I did Google Forms. The cool part about a Google form was we talked about the questions that needed to be required and the questions that weren't required, which was interesting because first thing is I don't want someone to answer what their favorite cupcake is at a famous cupcake place that's near Pittsburgh called Gigi's Cupcakes. I didn't want them to answer the question if you've never been there because we talked about that not being a valid answer. I'm not just like picking vanilla birthday surprise cupcakes at Gigi's if I've never been there. So first you need to ask if the person has been there. Then you need to make this question, not required. So we talked a lot about those types of things, especially the boys that wanted to ask all about the video games. If I haven't played your video game, I can't really give you an opinion on it. So we talked a lot about that. And then it was really neat to see them use the Google spreadsheet. So the first year that we did this, I think I put it on my website and they told their friends and I think they told their other teachers and some of them filled it out. I emailed it out to the staff and was like, can you help us out? And they got, 25, 50, whatever responses. Over the years, I've now emailed it out to the parents, or I put it on Seesaw, and I have Grandma in Oregon's filling it out, and I have, Mom at work has shared, the links to everyone at her work, and everybody's filling it out. And some of these kids were getting 300 responses they had to sort through, and they were like, oh my gosh. And it was actually relevant. I had kids that were picking Dick's Sporting Goods, and what section of Dick's Sporting Goods should I expand versus what section should we sell less of? Or Under Armour, do you buy more shorts versus shoes versus t-shirts, whatever it might be. So they picked something that was relevant to them that they liked, and then they were able to ask a question that was relevant. They were able to get answers or responses that were relevant, and then they had to prove what they were going to do something with that. We did color code them. It was a little bit easier to do that, so they kind of learned that skill as well. So when they went through and did their graphing, it was very hard at first. Now, I do know that in Google Sheets, you can make a graph, which is super cool if you didn't know that. But the thought of, those of you in the elementary classroom, the thought of you're like, we're all going to do this, and then you're like, is everybody ready? And then there's 2, and then these people over here are ready, and then they're goofing around because these 2 over here are still on the first slide, and you're like, what is happening? So it doesn't work. So I was like, I'm going to make a video of myself walking through it. I use Screencast-O-Matic, which is a free screencasting tool. It's a website. You can do up to 15 minutes for free, so it's great. And I did this during a planning period because I was like, how can I do this and I need to be in 27 places at one time. So they can pause and do and rewind and pause and go back. So what I did is I just, like I said, did this during a 45-minute planning. It's harder to hear on there, but.
Google Drive, and once first signed into Google Drive, you're going to go to New.
You get the gist. I walked them through exactly what they needed to do. If I go ahead and fast forward, and this ends up being about 5 or 6 minutes, I walk through every item that's on the side. If you did this in a classroom, when I'm standing up front and we're going over this, you can imagine. Right now in your head, you're thinking of that kid that's you're on this screen and he's still trying to figure out net open and a sheet. That's where he is. And you're like, we're 5 slides ahead of that. So it was helpful because they could say, okay, I'm going to do this step, so I'm going to pause it, I'm going to do whatever it says to do, and then I'm going to go ahead and go back.
The font, you can go ahead and change the font, it will change the
Okay. So that's Screencast-O-Matic. I highly recommend looking into it if you have not. Like I said, it allowed me to be in 27 places that year with 27 students at one time, earbuds, we were great. And I could go around and help. Then we used Google Docs to organize. We had a folder this year. I haven't done it this year, but now that we have Google Classroom, maybe I'll have them submit it through Google Classroom so that I can see it. That's something that I'm going to investigate when we get to that. This document and the forms and the sheets were in a folder so I could see and I can collaborate on it. It's nice to be able to kind of check in on what's happening. And the students typed out their paragraphs and made a plan so that they can make a keynote. And that was something new when we went one-to-one and they all had their iPads. I was not super familiar with Keynote. But my principal uses Keynote all the time to present to us, and he had just finished his doctorate, and I was like, hey, do you want to come in and teach my kids about Keynote? Oh, and me too, because I'm not familiar with how to use it. I mean, I'm sure I could figure it out, but I know you use it all the time. The kids were so excited that he was coming in and teaching a lesson. He stood up front and went through all the features of Keynote, taught them how to make things fly in and change the backgrounds and all the different colors. It was really neat. So sometimes you're not always the expert. Like, reach out to someone else if you're not familiar. Maybe don't spend all of the hours. I stood in the back and I learned a lot, and then I was able to help. So this is where we ended up with our keynotes. You can see, you know, Apple is always a big one. They want to survey about what they think. If they are choosing Apple as their company, they want to know which gender likes what kind of Apple products. Dunkin' Donuts is always usually a big one. Starbucks is sometimes a big one. And so hopefully this will open. One of the examples, so Panera was also one that we had last year. And if I go ahead and hit present, it should kind of show you. The thing I liked about Keynote, different than, I guess, Google Slides, and you could totally do Google Slides if you don't have the one-to-one iPads, was Keynote allows them to have all of these different features. Now, some of them can get a little much, like on every slide, things should not be bouncing, you know, like you can get whiplash watching some of them because they get really excited about the animation. So we do talk about that. And then when they present, I make them stand up in front of the class and like take on the role of, you know, you're the CEO and we are the stockholders, and like, what are you gonna do? I chose Panera and I'm asking, I like the food that they make, is why she chose this. I think she goes on to talk about like what kind of soups that she's gonna offer during what kind of times, and she talks about her prediction about what she thinks is gonna happen. All in all, with this whole project, having them pick something that was meaningful for them made so much of a difference. I wasn't getting blue is the favorite color of 5th grade, or, you know, recess is our favorite subject, or Tiger Paw pizza on Fridays is the favorite lunch. They actually had to think about the results. And then, of course, the fidget spinners, which now, thankfully, no longer exist. I don't know about you, but like, those are gone. They're gone. But yeah, I mean, it was relevant. She wanted to know what kind of fidget toy that people like, so. And then in the bottom corner, actually, the girl who did Gigi's Cupcakes, it was opening in a strip mall that was near us, and she went into the opening and told the owner that she had done a graphic project about her, and she was like, oh my gosh, she gave her a t-shirt, and she wore it for her presentation, and she was like, will you share the survey results with me? I'd really like to know what you found out. It was really cool. Her mom was like, I have to share this picture with you. It was really neat. So it just really made it kind of, you know, meaningful for her. So another thing I love is, can we do some tomorrow? Said no student ever about worksheets. So there's a funny story about this one too. I use the app Explain Everything. I know there's lots of free whiteboard apps out there, and actually last night at one of the vendor presentations, Prometheum was showing an online whiteboard website called Jamboard that you could also use. So like, that's free. I know that Explain Everything isn't free, but basically any kind of whiteboard application. And so we had this worksheet. We did it at the end of the fractions unit. It talks about all the different operations. And so I was like, oh, I could totally screenshot each one of these, put them into a slide and explain everything, and have the kids explain their thought process, show their work. You can see that there. So we also came up with, because this was brand new, that I was doing this for the first time, we came up with what we thought the rubric should be as a class. And so they decided you should get a point for the correct answer, and 2 points for a thorough explanation, 1 point for neatness, since we were putting it on the whiteboard app, voice clarity, and then your overall presentation. And so they did come up with what they should do. These are just some ideas or screenshots of what they did. And one thing you'll notice.
Today we are working on adding and subtracting fractions. First, we need to read the problem to know what we're doing. Last week, Taryn drank 2.5 miles on Monday, 3 1/4 miles on one. So for this problem, we had to figure out how much quarts.
So you can see I was able to listen to their thought process throughout and also see their work. I know in math class, we talk a lot about close reading, so I could see that she was like circling the numbers and highlighting what was important. You'll also notice that this video is 10 minutes and 30 seconds long. So it was a great idea that I was going to take that worksheet and make it into videos. And then every kid turned one in that was 10 minutes long, and there were 27 of them. And I was like, oh, great. So I was like watching the video while folding laundry, and I'm watching the video while I'm cooking dinner, and I was like, so next time I'm going to pick like 2 instead of like 8. So learn from me, don't do like 8 problems on the worksheet, because I didn't even think about it. I'm like, worksheet, oh yeah, they'll totally mark it down. But then that got multiplied by minutes, and then the minutes got multiplied by kids, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's a long time. And so this year I got smart, and I was like, do 2 problems, and we did 2. So don't be like me and make 10-minute videos. It's not a great idea, unless you want to watch videos for a really long time. Another one is that we did it as a quick exit ticket. Those of you that are elementary math teachers see this, like the nice window method that just like came out a couple years ago, right? And I was trying to figure out how I could see what they were doing and I could be in one spot. This was one problem. And they also use the explain everything.
So here we have the problem 18 times 25 hundredths. In order to do this problem, I'm going to show a model. First,
and for those of you that didn't know, usually the left earbud is an actual microphone, if you didn't know that, on most earbuds. So the girl that's recording that is actually talking into her left earbud, and then she can listen to herself with her right earbud. And so if you didn't know that, most earbuds, the left one, is a microphone. And so she was able to do this one problem and submit it to me, and I could see that she knew what I was talking about. Quick exit ticket, one problem is good. So explain everything, that year that I did it for the first time was a totally new tool for them. So the biggest thing that I can tell you when you're doing a new tool is let them play with it first. Like, don't introduce a new tool on the day you want them to actually take it seriously. That's a really bad idea. Because they can't, like, it's like when you see something new, you're like, I want to click around, and what is this, like, what does this, you know, painting brush do? And oh, I have the background colors, and oh, I can make it like rainbows. Because otherwise, the math problem turns into like, how many colors can I use to write the math problem as opposed to doing the math problem? It's kind of like Kahoot, but we'll talk about that later. So it's like you lose sight of what it actually is. So like I allowed like half a period. I went over everything, and I was like, okay, use the tool, tomorrow we're doing this. So that's also one thing that I can tell you is when you use a new tool or use a new app, give some time for like playtime. You just have to. They have to like get it out of their system or they're not going to take it seriously. You can adapt this for any grade level. I think any grade level could use this kind of whiteboarding tool to show you anything. I've even used it in place of the old, you know, whiteboards with the Expo markers, which I still have, and you know, we hold up our answer. They can write down their answer and hold it up, and I can quickly scan the room and see. It's just something different they like. Think of something you want them to show their thinking, and maybe you want to hear their thinking if you want them to record. It could be as simple as having them just solve one problem. Don't do 10. That's bad. Okay. So if you're not familiar with Seesaw, the free version is perfectly fine. It provides you with everything that you would want or need to communicate with parents. They have amazing support. I can't even tell you the number of times in the beginning when I was using it where I was like, oh, I wonder if you can do that, or I wonder if you can add more than one picture to a upload, or I wonder if you can do this. And I would tweet, and I would get an answer back like within 10 minutes of walking around the room and be able to answer a student's question. They have Facebook groups if you're on Facebook. The PD and your PJs, which is on their website, which are little webinars, sometimes they're 15 minutes, half an hour, are amazing. You can literally turn them on and cook dinner or do whatever you're doing and listen to them. They are pre-recorded, so you can watch them anytime. Seesaw can also be adapted for any grade level. If you think of something that you want them to show, this is another place. So I'm going to show you an example of that. They added what's called announcements. So if you think of those of you in the room that might use something like Remind, but I know like with Remind, you're not allowed to send reminders to kids under 13, and so like I'm an elementary teacher and nobody's 13, so you can use announcements on Seesaw and it will pop up like in their Seesaw feed. Our gym teachers, phys ed teachers use it a lot for like jump rope for heart, don't forget to bring in your money, and it pops up on their screen. Our music teacher has used Seesaw to remind them to bring their recorder. It's a really neat tool, and it actually is communication between, not only it can be with the kids in the class, but it can also be between parents. So on math, I use Seesaw in math, but I have it closed. The kids can't see each other's work, but their parents can see their work, which I like, because I don't want the kids to see each other's work in math. I don't really need that to be happening. But in ELA, I leave it open so they can see each other's work, so they can see each other's writing, or we did a New Year's resolution project and they could see and comment on each other's. I'm sure there's other sessions here that get into Seesaw and all of the little things about it, but you can organize things in folders, you can send announcements, you can see here there's different posts in the journal. You can see that they can post, we did QAR at the beginning of the year, and spelling is obviously not our forte, but once again, as my dad said to me at the very beginning, like, what are you grading here? Are you grading the fact that are you looking at, do they understand what QAR is, or are you grading their spelling? And so he does understand what we're doing. We talked about write their questions versus think and search and having things in different places. One thing that was added recently is called an activity, and so you can actually record, if you see here, I recorded my voice telling them what I needed them to do for the activity that was below. It's nice. Also, again, being able to be in 20-some places at one time explaining, and so this is just like a snippet.
All right, you're going to choose a problem from 3.5 and 3.6. The adding and subtracting decimals using quick pictures.
And that was the example that I showed you before. So when they hit this, they heard that, and then they went ahead and they were able to do it down below. Another example is actually, again, what they're doing today while I'm not here. When it said do your Seesaw activity in Schoology, you can schedule them ahead of time. So I'm not there. I set it to release to them at 8 o'clock this morning. I didn't have to go in and do anything. Right now, probably, actually maybe a little bit earlier, they were actually working on that activity. So you can schedule it ahead of time. You can attach templates. So I attached, actually that's a screenshot of the reteach page from our math book. The 2 problems that are up there, I did a little screenshot. I uploaded it as a template. When they went into the activity, it opens their own copy. They did it and they resubmitted it. The really cool part is, this is how it comes to you. So it was like a quick I guess scan, and I can see who hasn't turned it in yet, who has turned it in, and who like needs approved. Now I have mine set up where I have to approve it before it goes into the feed. So this is math class, so only I see this, they see it, and their parents see it. No other kids are seeing anybody else's work, which is nice. The other thing that I've been doing is you can write comments on their submissions. So with some of them, if they submitted it, I will approve it, but in the comments I'll say you need to reduce number 2 and number 4. And then they can go back in, they reduce it, and then they like resubmit it so that I can see that they are fixing their errors. I just really like this screen. You don't have to like scroll through and see who's turned it in. I can quickly see who's turned something in and who has not. So another, in Seesaw, it was just the draw tool.
Okay, so first I'm going to do 26 minus 4. So that's 20.
And he just did a quick check for understanding. So this app is actually called Number Pieces. It's an app, but it is also, I got your back. It's also a website. So if you teach elementary math and you haven't seen this, I actually didn't find it, one of my teachers found it. You can actually have the kids show their work here. You can break these apart. You can double them up. You can actually break them apart, so then you can pull them out piece by piece. And so this website, or the app if you have devices that have apps, this is what we used here. So you can see they were able to show the problem, then we showed that our answers, and we uploaded it actually to Seesaw. So we did a lot of them together in class. Then they took a screenshot, and then they submitted their screenshot up to Seesaw. I could see it, and their parents could see it. And especially, I know with this new way that sometimes we're showing our math work, a lot of the parents were like, what are we doing? And so they were able to see like, oh, okay, like this is what's happening, because they were able to see it through Seesaw. So again, this is just a student example. She's showing how she used that. That was Number Pieces, so it's either an app or a website, and it was free. So ELA, these are some of the apps we're going to talk about quickly. We have, every year we go on a camping trip for 3 days in the woods with 5th graders. It's really fun. And when we come back, we write about our experience. And so when I first got my job 12 years ago, you know, my team teacher was like, so when we come back, we write a story and then we make a paper sculpture, and like, that's what we do. And I was like, okay. So I did that for the first year, I did that for the second year, and then I was like, well, I really like to dabble into different technology things. So we moved over and we started using Book Creator to create books related to what we did at our on our camping trip. Another thing is that we write gingerbread narratives around the holidays. They have to pick a gingerbread person that can be their main character or a character. We used to put them in these books. They had to illustrate them. It took a really long time, actually, because you have those kids that write a story that takes up 30-some pages, and then they have to illustrate 30 pages. And so we used Book Creator to create those books as well. We went through the writing process as we normally would, because that's still really important. We still need our kids, you know, we're all in this room, teachers in Pennsylvania. I still need my kids to be able to write on paper and do that at the end of the day. So typed it into Google Docs after so we could cut and paste into Book Creator a little easier. They had a choice of drawing pictures, or they could take pictures, and we talked about copyright and where we could get pictures from and all of those things. And they just announced a real-time collaboration, so you can actually have students collaborating on books together in Book Creator as well. Another way, I worked with my tech integrator. We created a little quick tutorial, and we put that into, I think we put it into Schoology, and I also had a paper copy. So again, it's like if you have a question about what you're supposed to do, you could refer to the tutorial. I'll also come around and help you. But anytime you can give them something to look at, depending on the grade level, I guess it could be pictures or it could be words if you're teaching maybe 4th or 5th grade. It's helpful. At least they can look at your paper and I'll be over in a minute instead of them just lining up, you know, at your desk or wherever it is that you are. We also use Apple Pages. So again, like you can see, this is that same example. One year we did a Book Creator, and then we got our iPads, and we were one-to-one. And I was like, well, I want them to get used to using some Apple tools. And so if you're not familiar with Apple Pages, you can make newsletters, you can make trifold pamphlets, and that's what we did here. They made a pamphlet as if they went to the camp and they were going to experience these things. What would you experience? And so they created these pamphlets about their favorite part of camp. We did all different types of writing, and so we used Apple Pages. Another item is with our reading curriculum, we have those leveled readers. I don't know what you might call them. They're like the small books that they can read. One of the things that we did with one of those is that they made a pamphlet for it after about what they learned. So it was another way that we used that app. Padlet, I know, has recently changed. You can only get so many for free now. If you delete them, you can keep using the free ones. But a lot of the kids, what we did with this one is we've been talking about paraphrasing versus summarizing, which is really hard for 5th graders to do. And so everybody had, you know, the same sentence, and then they were working in groups. They did a lot of things on paper. But I wanted them to be able to see everybody's example in one spot. Like I wanted you to see that with this one here, it says if you need to buy a lunch tomorrow, remember to bring $3 to school with you. That was what they started with. Now, what did every group come up with that had the same idea but wrote it in different words? And so I used the Padlet and I used the stream feature. So each group submitted what they had done, and we could all see on the same screen what everyone was doing. So think about what you could do where you need everyone to be able to see an example that you had. But they broke off, they worked in groups, and then they like kind of reported back on the screen, and we were able to see what everyone was thinking. Quizzes is my favorite alternative to Kahoot. Only because I love Kahoot. I do. I like Kahoot at the end of the year. I like Kahoot whenever I don't really need you to be serious. Sometimes Kahoot makes me, they always joke, I said, Kahoot sometimes makes me a really mean teacher because I get mad. And it's supposed to be fun. But halfway through, I'm like, stop it! You know, right? Like, solve the problem. Because they're just worried about getting, like, answering it fast. And I'm like, you didn't even write the math problem down. Like, you've lost sight of what the whole thing is about. So there's a time and a place for Kahoot. There definitely is at the end of the year. No. Okay, science review. But quizzes I like because I feel like it takes the parts of Kahoot that people like, but it also allows you to have a little bit more autonomy or a little bit more decisions as a teacher. So like the figurative language pre-test I wanted to give them. I obviously want them to pay attention. There's different settings in quizzes if you're not familiar. You can have them show the answers, you can have them review, you can turn these on and off. Jumble the questions. That's my favorite one to turn off, that they get more points for answering it fast. That's what I like about this. I'm like, it is not about being the first one. It is not about being fast. It is not about that. It is about getting the answer correct or doing your best. And so I like to turn that part off. Also, sometimes showing the leaderboard. You have to know your class. I've heard, this year when we've used it a couple times, a lot of the kids are like, well, where are you? Like, I'm number 4. And I'm like, it's not about that either. But you can turn those on and off. You can also turn the little memes that come up, and then you can turn on and off music. I just like being able to decide what it is I'm doing and what's the purpose, and can I turn things on and off. You can make your own memes. So in the bottom right corner is our principal, and they thought that was so funny when he popped up. You could take your teammates, you could take yourself, whatever it is, and you could actually upload the picture and make your own meme and write things on there. Social studies. So in place of a test, I started teaching social studies 2 years ago. And again, kind of came into a team of teachers who had been doing it for a really long time. And it was like, well, this is what we do for this, and this is what we do for this, and this is what we do for this. And you're like, okay. And you kind of feel like a square peg in a round hole when you try to do that, because it's what someone else has done, and you try to do that packet or you try to do that project, and you're like, this isn't me, it feels weird. And so I had to try to make it my own. And so one of the things that I did in place of a test is they did a glog. Glogster.edu is really great to work with. On the next screen, I will show you what they've talked to me about. But one of the things when I first started teaching social studies, one of those things was, my teammate had said, well, we do this map at the beginning, and they color this world map, and then they have to label certain parts. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. That works perfectly. And then this is what I got on Seesaw.
I learned many things in this project. One thing I learned was to follow directions and to not color all over the map. I also now learn that there are many countries, and I know a lot of them now. These are 2 things I learned on this project.
And I listened to that and I was like, cool. I also didn't play for you the one that was like, and I know that Africa is green. Because on the map they colored, it was green. And I was like, all right, well that was a waste of 3 days. So, and so that was, again, one of those things where this is what we do. And I was like, that's cool. Did you ever ask them what they actually learned after the 3 days of coloring the map is? Because that's what I got. There's a lot of countries and don't color, which was funny because, again, I was new and I'm like, okay, well, you're going to get them all together and talk to them. And I'm telling you, my team teacher was like, do not color all over that map. And he got that. She was very clear about that. So again, I was like, but they didn't learn where things were, and they didn't know how to pronounce it. It was just one of those things where you did it, you look back and you're like, I don't know why I did that. They really didn't get anything out of it. So what I did was we created a glog. I did pay for this, so skip over this if it's not something you're interested in. But you can contact them. They're really easy to work with. I got 125 kids, so I shared it with my team teacher. I did it with two groups of students for $47. We used it for a couple of other things. We posted it to Seesaw afterwards. They really liked it. And I created it as a museum project. So I said that they needed to create a little interactive blurb about each of the explorers that we were learning about. And this is kind of what we ended up with. It's just another example. Some of them ended up super messy, but some of them were very organized, like you can see here. It was just another way for them to show their learning, as opposed to just coloring a map, or as opposed to filling out an answer on a test. They were able to actually show me all the things from that age of explorers that they learned. That was just another example. Another social studies example, but you could use it in any area. If you're familiar with Flipgrid, one of the things that I love to share about this, now it's 100% free, if you didn't know that. This summer, thanks to, I think it was Microsoft that bought them out and made it 100% free for teachers. The kids love it. We've done it with a lot of different things, but in social studies specifically, we did Christopher Columbus, and the question was why we should celebrate or why we shouldn't celebrate Columbus Day after we really learned what Christopher Columbus was like. The coolest part was, as you can see here, we some of the stickers, and we have our bedrooms and all the things. And part of me at the beginning was like, do I turn the stickers off? And then I was like, you know what? Do I really care? As long as they did it, I guess I don't care that there's a Santa hat. I guess I don't care about that. So, but the coolest part was one of my students. I started having the ESL students or ELL students last year, and she did not say one word in class. She was not speaking a whole lot of English and was just trying to learn. So I gave her this project. They had like 3 days to do it. And the cool part was that she could write it down.
In Los Angeles Times, it says, "We can celebrate that our country began with a promise of liberty and equality. I also agree. We have to think about making Americans who lived in America before colonists."
That was my favorite part. I showed it to the ESL teacher and she was like, oh my gosh, like got all teared up. Because she doesn't say anything, but she had the time to write it down. I'm sure she practiced that a million times before she was able to upload it. And then she uploaded it, and a lot of her classmates were able to see. What made me laugh also is like, there's only like 27 kids in my class and it is 2,000 views. Like, how many times did you watch each other? And then I love the fact that they're like watching themselves probably a million times. I don't know. But like, it's so funny when you do things like that and they're like, can we do it? My teammate just did a flip grid actually on Friday with social studies, and one student who never does his homework ever was like leaving and was like, can I do it over the weekend? And she was like, what? You don't have to. Like, we're going to do it on Monday. He was like, yeah, but I want to do it over the weekend. And she was like, okay. I mean, they want to. You can see half of these kids were on their couch in their bedroom, you know. We have like the dog in one of the pictures. Flipgrid is really cool. It's so easy to set up. So if you haven't dabbled in that yet for any subject area, I did it at the beginning of this year to introduce ourselves to the class. I put a Flipgrid on my website after they got their letters. And I did one and said like, hi, my name, you can see my face, who I was. And they made one saying, hey, like, I'll see you on the first day. It was really neat because they could all see each other's. I got that idea off of Twitter. I did not come up with that on my own. But I thought it was really cool, and I was like, I'm going to do that. Another thing in social studies, again, in place of the test, is that they made a book and book creator about the 13 colonies. We're actually coming up on this next. We're probably going to do it. If you don't have iPads, or if you're not able to buy book creator, because I know it's not free, you could use a Google slideshow. Like, again, you're just kind of taking ideas and making them what you need them to be. We created a rubric. We posted it again to Seesaw so others could see it. And they made these books about the life in the 13 colonies. They added pictures and those types of things. So, with my last few minutes here, science. This is the project that you saw if you were here in the beginning. Basically, what happened was we used to make these pop-up books, and it was great. It was fine. They were fun, you know, a little crafty, and they cut them apart and they had pop-ups and all of those things. But again, I was like, we need to start trying to integrate some different technological features. So we used an app called Do Ink, which is a green screen app. And at the end of the 2 chapters, we were doing research on a different biome that they had to pick. The rainforest, the tundra, the ocean, whatever it is they chose. We still did paper pencil research because I thought that that was kind of important. They still needed to write it down on note cards that we gave them. But I knew there had to be maybe a better way, especially as you heard in the video, just to kind of integrate some of those technology skills. So we talked about making a travel commercial. If you were going to go to this biome, how are you going to get people to travel to the tundra? Or how are you going to get people to travel to the rainforest? And that's what you saw there at the very beginning. We talked about writing down on our note cards. And again, when I did this project, that's why I like to keep these ones in there every year. I'm like, should I take these out? But I did this project when we had no laptop cards. And that was only 6 years ago. We had no laptop cards, we had no iPads, we had 2 computer labs. I'm in a school with 800 students. It was hard. Again, you had to think like so far ahead and you really had to figure it out. There were 2 people in our building that had iPads because they were special education teachers. I had to ask them if I could borrow their iPads. As the student said before, we ran out of space 2 times because I forgot that they were small and we were housing all these videos on there. The really cool part is they did not memorize those things that you saw in the video. We used Google Slides as a teleprompter. And we came up with that idea, and I don't even know how. It was my teammate and I said, I need something to them to read. You don't want them to be reading on a piece of paper. You don't really want to like post on the wall where they're doing this, right? So we talked about they typed out what they were going to say in large enough font that they could stand about this far away. We had a clicker that was in their hand, and so they just held it down by their side, and they could click it at their own pace. That was the nice part about not having to be an actual teleprompter, because then it wasn't getting ahead of them. When I'm ready for the next slide, all I had to do was click the button. And I think you saw that in some of the pictures that were in the video. We also made printed step-by-step directions for the Do Ink app, which was super helpful. So you can see here, and we had to film in all random places. You can see that You know, he's able to film. We have the laptop set up here that has the teleprompter. She has this in her hand. We have somebody that's helping with all those things. It was really neat to see them like all work together. They were almost like in filming teams, and we like spread out all over the building, just, you know, using the games to make it higher, right? I just feel like, oh. We were like, it's not high enough, and they were like, let's just stack the games up. And so you can see the different ways. So again, this is one of the examples, if you weren't here in the beginning, that we ended up with when it was all finished.
Have you ever wondered what it's like outside the places you've been and lived? Have you ever had a thought pass your mind about what it's like in the woods?
And I would say each one is about 3 to 4 minutes long. It was really neat. There was all that research that they had done, but they were telling it to you like a travel commercial.
Sure, it may not be sunny, but it is pretty chilly. But he'll soon agree.
And what's funny is he was wearing that jacket because he wore green that day. It wasn't even supposed to be hard, but it ended up being perfect. Had he been wearing the jacket and like doing ready for us, that might not have worked. But like he did, he showed up for his like filming day, and again, 2 iPads, 102 students. We were like, this is your filming day. Like, it's happening. Be ready. Like, you cannot have another day. This is not happening. And he did. He was like, I'm ready. And we were like, you're wearing a green t-shirt. And he was like, I guess I'm putting my jacket on. And then I'm like, well, you're doing the tundra. It'll be perfect. So, last minute tips for remodeling your lessons and moving up the ladder. You should start small. Pick one thing. And I know I went through a lot of things today, and I went really fast. I will, like I said, share the presentation, but you should start small, pick one thing. Maybe today you're like, oh, that was really cool. I liked how she did Seesaw. I'm going to look into that. Or I like how she organized Google Drive. When I go back on Thursday, I'm going to have my kids do that so we can start clean. Maybe you're going to look into Padlet. Maybe you're going to think about a different way to do something. Definitely ask for help. I feel like a lot of the times at my school, they're like, oh, you know you know how to do all that stuff. And I'm like, I only know because I know what my professional learning network knows. I know what people know that it's on Twitter. I know when I go to these conferences and I follow all these different people. Or when I ask. You know, there's a lot of times I have these great ideas in my head, but I'm not really sure how to get it actually out and make it work. So ask people. Bounce ideas off of people. If you have a tech integrator, if you have somebody in your building that is a little easier, or reach out via Twitter. There's a lot of people out there that will help you. Not everything has to be done above the line. I think that's hard for people outside the classroom to understand. They're like, you should be in redefinition. Not every day. Like, it's never going to happen. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, like our Rube Goldberg machine friend told us. Try. And sometimes it fails in front of the kids, and you're like, well, and they need to see that, because they need to see that you can persevere through it, or say, you know what, we're going to put this away for today, we'll come back to it tomorrow. But don't give up when it doesn't work the first time, or it doesn't work like it's supposed to. Like, the 10-minute videos, like, that clearly did not go how I planned. I did not plan on spending all of those hours doing that. But definitely do that. Let the kids help you. And then the last thing that I would say is, remember, like, why you're doing all of this. So, this is a picture of my class. And the biggest thing is, like, remember why you do this. And sometimes I know that we get bogged down in all of the things we have to do and all of the paperwork we have to submit and testing and all of these things, but think about why you're doing this. Why do you want to integrate technology, and why do you want to help these kids to have these skills as they move forward, whatever grade level you might teach, because they need us to do that for them. So thank you for coming. I hope you learned something you can take with you. And have a great rest of your day.
Oh, that's why she's here. So we're right next door. Excuse me. Thank you.